right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session. It's called Trust-Based Customer Relationship, what healthcare and life sciences figured out first before the other industries did. All right, why are we here? What are we here to talk about? The world is becoming increasingly privacy conscious, whether it is the recent verdict on social media and child safety, or decades-old wiretapping laws being resurrected so plaintiffs have more weapons to go after companies with an online presence. 2026 and privacy have gotten very complicated. Entire industries, entire sectors are trying to figure out how to have that privacy-first, privacy-conscious relationship with their audiences, with their customers. However, healthcare and life sciences didn't have the luxury to just start figuring things out. They've been operating under extreme constraints for many, many years now. What they've built is not just a compliance infrastructure, but it's more of a foundation to build trust with the customer and leverage that trust on an ongoing basis. And that's what we're here to unpack this afternoon. We'll be hearing from leaders who live and breathe this stuff in the healthcare space, in the life sciences space. They do this every day with battle scars and wounds to show for it. We'll be hearing from them. I'm Nirmal Vimana, Principal Product Specialist at Helium. I oversee product and strategy for the healthcare and life sciences vertical. I will go around and ask the panelists to do a quick intro on themselves. Start with you, Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence Montgomery. Good to spend a bit of time with you all. I lead marketing for Baptist Health. I've led marketing for 20 plus years in large hospital systems.
Fantastic. Mariah.
Mariah McNail, Manager of Delivery and Implementation for BJC Health. I'm super excited to talk to you all today about what happens when compliance stops being a checkbox and starts being real.
Alan Ochoa, nice to meet you all, Director of Product for MarTech and AdTech at GSK. Excited to be here and talk to you guys again about the importance of keeping trust.
Awesome, let's get things going. So each of you operates obviously in an environment where losing the customer trust isn't just about lost efficiency or lost ad spend or lost dollars, money. It's something much more consequential. It has reputational ramifications. It has legal ramifications. So the question for you is, how has that fact that losing your customer trust could be seriously consequential, how has that changed in how you approach the customer relationship and building trust in a way that other industries are just starting to come to grips with? We'll start with you, Lawrence.
Yeah, so the trust piece in the healthcare space is obviously crucial, right? We never had the luxury of deciding whether we wanted to personalize or if we wanted to, follow privacy guidelines. And so we've always had to follow those privacy guidelines. We've always had to put it first. When I started this role about 4 years ago, I inherited a tech stack that needed updating. We had a third-party agency that was running our technology and our CRM, and we needed to step back from that because we had some campaigns that were put through this agency and other campaigns that we were doing ourselves, and we couldn't integrate it all. And that was a problem. And so we had to redesign that. We had issues like our video player partner wouldn't sign a BAA, wouldn't guarantee us that they were not selling the data that they were using for our customers to other third parties. So we really had to start over. We really had to prioritize privacy and put that first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And BAA, for the audience's benefit, if we could say a few words about that. So it's an agreement that we have with vendors.
I'm sure many of you have BAAs in your current agreements, but it's the requirement around what you can and can't do with your own data, and what you can and can't disclose for us on our patients.
Yeah. Awesome, thanks for that. So we're going to come back to how you thought about solving some of that, what solution, what vision that entailed.
Yes.
We'll revisit that. We'll move over to you, Mariah.
I think I really work on the implementation side. And so for us, we had to be so careful around how we controlled the environment, how we were able to keep vendors or maybe other third parties from putting code snippets on our sites, adding tags on our sites. We had to completely redesign how we thought about our marketing strategists and how they interacted with our websites. We really needed to make sure that the marketing team, the technology teams understood the danger of a single misconfigured tag. That tag could pass data to a vendor with which we did not have that business associates agreement with, and could expose us to regulatory or compliance risk. So I think one of the foundational things that we really had to work on was that education and making sure that we centralized and started to control some of what was happening on our websites.
Makes perfect sense. So Alan, to the outsider, to the layman, it may feel, oh, healthcare and life sciences, they're one and the same, but it's not true. You're on the life sciences manufacturer, as we call it, side. So what challenges are you encountering, and how did you have to change things up in approaching the trust-based relationship?
I mean, I think foundationally, the way that a lot of pharmas have approached it is keeping that data that doesn't need to be together separate. So really keeping our HCP and our patient data, because we see those as two distinct, different groups of individuals with two different consent frameworks, with regulatory needs that sometimes don't necessarily overlap. And I think keeping in mind that it's just as important for us as a manufacturer to keep the trust of the HCP and that relationship. But also, I think on the patient side, it's super important not to lose that trust, because in our case, I think that's almost the worst case scenario when we lose it on the patient side, because the one that's most negatively impacted is the patient. Sometimes our product could have helped that patient, and if we lose trust or they lose trust in us and don't go down, finding out more information or asking their doctor about that product, again, it could have potentially helped them.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of scenario that we like to avoid, I would think, at all costs. And just to add to what Maria was saying, I think another huge important factor is keeping data governance in place with all these tags and everything, all the data that you're collecting and what partners you're sending them to. And so I think keeping in mind how we evolve the stack in this complex environment, potentially clean rooms, I think, are going to play a more important role in the future as we think about where can that space be where we collaborate with some of our partners.
Absolutely. So as much as the technology part is easy to enable and leverage, not having the contractual requirements in place, like certain vendors refusing to sign a BAA, that essentially ties your hands, but that's by design. That is exactly the point. It's not about getting creative with the technology, it's about having the discipline to rein things in and then doing things by the book. Yeah, and that's how you build the trust, I would imagine. Fantastic. All right, so let's kind of double click on the brass tacks, the implementation reality, the ground reality, whether it's strategy or operations or whatever it might be. We'll start with you, Lawrence and Alan. So you've had to build something different, right? So given the restrictions, given the need for that trust building requirement, you've had to do something different, whether it's a roadmap. Maybe for you, Lawrence, it could have been an organization or an exec level decision. For you, it could have been technology transformation, product roadmaps, features, things of that sort. What was needed to make this happen? What did you have to overcome to instill that new thinking and the transformation within the organization? We'd love to start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a couple of pieces that we really had to put together. One, on the business side with the other executives of my organization, this stuff is foreign, right? I worked with a bunch of hospital operators. They're very expert at healthcare delivery, at operating large hospitals across, very complex system. But this data stuff, this marketing stuff, how we optimize and utilize that data is just very different. And so really, for my team, we had to become experts in this space and be able to put together that vision of what this could be, why it's important for us to continue to own the relationship with our patients and not be so reliant on third parties to connect with people that we already should know and how important that patient experience is. And so being able to cast that vision, being able to be expert enough so that we can step in a room with confidence and know that, hey, my COO, my CEO is not going to know this stuff, but they're going to know enough to trust us to be experts and actually build what we need to build to own these relationships.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks for that. Alan, what's your take on this? What do you have to overcome?
I mean, I think this is a ever-changing landscape. It's not something that ever finishes, to be honest. We've recently made the decision to be more of a consent-driven organization, so kind of like a self-imposed GDPR. And it's really more about owning that trust or that value exchange with the HCPs and the patients and letting them know that if you do click yes on that consent pop-up, we want to bring value to that relationship and help you find the thing that you're looking for. Whether we do that with web personalization, a web chatbot, or maybe trigger a rep visit. Those are the kind of things or intent signals that we want to continue to, I think, leverage as we fine tune what a consent-driven marketing strategy looks like.
That makes sense. And also, life sciences is in a different sport, isn't it? For those of you are familiar with the HIPAA privacy law, even though you're not traditionally regulated by it, you're starting to behave like you are one. So you're not required by the government to have a BAA with Telium or any vendor, but you are asking for them to sign one anyway. That way you have this optional framework almost you're opting into to, again, build that trust, which means that gives you a framework to operate within, and it sets certain guardrails without you having to even go look for them and getting creative with it. And you mentioned consent. That's interesting because you are essentially engaging different personas, HCPs who are prescribing medication and patients who need the medication. So there was some nuance there which we will come back to if time permits. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit and focusing on you, Mariah. So you sit at the intersection of strategy and implementation. So you have somewhat of a unique position on this panel. Not only do you have a seat at the table on the strategy side, but you have to then go ahead and make that a reality. So given that sort of niche or that requirement for your role, what does a compliant foundational data architecture look like to you? What does that mean to you?
I think it's really important to understand where we came from. We came from Google Analytics was removed from all of our websites in 2022. And we had really nothing. We had no insights available to us other than a SQL tool that our developers had sort of homegrown built. That tool had the tendency to get wiped out after upgrades. Really, our marketing teams, our technology teams didn't have any insight into what was happening on the web. Thankfully, we were able to work with a third-party partner. We introduced Telium as a HIPAA-compliant data collector. And with that framework, we've been able to turn the lights back on. And we really use Telium for most of our stack. We have it as a tag manager. We have it as a data collector. We use Insights in order to publish many of our reports and share information with our marketing partners. So we have evolved our stack with some other voice of the customer data, and we're really looking forward to integrating Telium with our EHR. We believe that that is the next step for us in taking advantage of understanding the full customer journey, being able to share with customers when there's opportunities for earlier appointments or other availability. So that's sort of where we're headed.
Yeah. And I think the way BJC is approaching this is also, you're not necessarily using more tech.
Right.
By default. You're questioning the value of anything you're collecting, any tech you're using to activate the data or make something happen in terms of patient engagement. That has also forced you to shall we say, take a closer look at what you already have. And is there more value being derived from it? Not only for operational efficiency reasons, but also for compliance reasons. The more places your data goes to, the risk of exposure increases. So you're trying to keep things, for example, analytics at the point of collection, data collection. So you've had to think things that way.
Absolutely. And I would say that there is a hunger for information in both our marketing and technology teams. There are so many data points that people wanted us to collect.
Yeah.
And really, we've used various strategies like Minto pyramids, et cetera, to help people kind of think through why do they want that information? What are they going to do with it once they have it?
Yeah.
And so it's helped us understand that collecting the minimum amount of information and then only sharing what is compliant to do so, what we absolutely must share, is really the framework that we should go with.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense to me.
Yep.
All right, so now I'm keeping my promise to you, Alan. We're going to come back to the different persona engagement. HCPs and patients, different requirements, different needs. One is looking for information so they can prescribe medication to their patients. The other one is actually looking to get treatment and consume the medication. So that's challenging unto itself, different frameworks, different regulatory obligations to meet, and what have you. The question is, what does that then make possible? So having this foundation that enables you to trust in a trusted manner, engage with these diverse persona types, what has that enabled for you, or what has that made possible for you? What are you able to do now that you could not before?
I mean, I think when you have the right foundation, you've set up not just the right data layer, the right actions, the right governance with everything from tags to the data flows, it actually enables your team to move faster. So once you have that framework, again, I think it opens the door to innovation, maybe a little bit more, because you know where your rails are. And so then you start thinking, how can I start thinking about bringing some of these agentic solutions into our stack? And again, I think maybe plugging in the real-time context, the real-time intent that we're getting from Telium to bring it to clean rooms, to models, to places that I think we want to take action with that. And so that's what I think setting the route foundation enables you to do. It's move much quicker because you know that you can trust the data and the tech that you have. And always I think, we're going to be evolving that tech, and pieces of that tech are going to be evolving their role within your stack as well. So something, I would say even like the CDP, which we used to do very bread and butter, I would say, identity resolution, things wins. Now we're playing with Telium and other technologies in ways that, are pushing the boundaries of what we thought we could get real-time data to and from certain locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And prescribers have their own channels you engage them on. So Telium has the flexibility to, if you want, physically separate that channel altogether from the patient engagement ecosystem, or even keep things logically separate if physical is overly aggressive. So you have the flexibility, and we also talk about this all the time. Having that end-to-end flexibility, what data you're collecting, on whom, in what shape, in what format, did they consent to it? What data are you even retaining? And what data, if anything, are you even sharing with a vendor that's outside your ecosystem that's trusted? And in what form? That end-to-end flexibility would be very critical as regulations change, as you become closer and closer to acting like, for example, a health system, almost like a concierge, if you will, where you are connecting patients to care and resources, almost acting like you are a clinic, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So the flexibility would be very crucial, I think, now more than ever, and will continue to be so in the future.
I think it's important that it's just as important when you're maturing your identity resolution strategy over the years to mature your consent and right to forget strategy as well. Because if those two don't match, you're going to end up in a corner pretty quick.
Makes sense. All right, so speaking of altitude again, you are a CMO. You see things at an altitude and at a level that other folks don't necessarily get to experience. So what does it all mean to you at the end of the day? Because business wants to know what all of this is worth. Yeah, Telium sounds great. The other tax sounds great, but what is it worth? What does it give us? So what has having that compliant data foundation that allows you to build the trust with your patient population, what has that enabled your team to do, your marketing organization to do, and how has it changed what they have been able to deliver?
Yeah, so obviously there's a monetary value to this, but I'm gonna speak maybe a little bit to the reality of how we operate, and I'll add a bit to what Alan said, because that's spot on. Our ability to operate our marketing activities within a clean space, meaning that I don't want data in my system that we can't use, right? And so that consent piece up front, you're in a clean environment, you have the guardrails of how you can and can't use that data, means when we have a problem to solve, when we have a service line that desperately needs to attract patients or has a new product to launch, we don't have to also figure out how do we work around HIPAA and privacy issues with the data we have. We're already operating in that space. We can move much quicker and we can be much more precise. And so it really starts to compound, because every dollar that you spend, you want to spend in that space. you don't want to spend it outside of that space. You want to be able to get that feedback. You want to be able to operate in a space where you have confidence that you're not going to, go down the wrong path. So it really is, it's speed to market, and then it also gets to that efficiency in how you're spending your dollars.
Yeah, and would you agree that that upfront investment to getting things right, whether through proper vetting of vendors, across team, cross-functional collaboration, is worth it doing all of it upfront?
It's worth not having to talk to my compliance folks every marketing campaign, right? Because we do, right? When we went through this process of reimagining our tech stack and all the different pieces of it, we engaged with compliance at every piece of that process, right? We built the rules around what we can and can't do, and we're still building those rules. But we don't want to have to ask for permission when we launch a new cardiology campaign. Hey, can we do this? And so it's absolutely worth it to get that work done up front. It's more work in the beginning, but it allows you just to have this open, clean space that you can operate and do your job.
Couldn't agree with you more. Well said. All right, last one for all of you. So you've all built something, transformed something, created something that most industries are only now starting to be forced to be reckoned with, If someone in this room, they could be from retail, financial services, e-commerce, could be any non-healthcare or life sciences vertical. If they came up to you after the session and asked you, where do I start? Make it simple for me. Where do I begin? Where do I start? What would you tell them? Maybe we'll start with you, Lawrence.
Yeah, so I resonate with that space, right? Where do you begin? Because it's a lot, right? When I think about my marketing career in the healthcare space 20 years ago, I was not expected to be a technology expert, right? I was expert on other things like branding and design, but now you have to be expert in this tech space. And so I would start with learning, right? When we were selecting our tech partners, it wasn't just about the actual SaaS software. It was also about the learning environment that came along with that organization. Mm-hmm. Crucially important, because what you build today is not what it's going to be tomorrow. The software changes, your need changes, the environment is changing. And so really look for partners that you can grow and learn with, and allow yourself to evolve together. When I first started doing this tech stack search, and we were going through a bunch of RFPs, and the Telium rep reached out to us, and I think I still owe her some consulting fees because I literally, we sat down for coffee a couple of times. I got questions. Like I have real questions, and not just on Telium, on the rest of my tech stack too. And having those partners, shout out Christina Vick if you're out there. Thank you for that, because that helped us build what we needed to build, and that environment of learning together really is the difference for us in how we select our partners.
Makes perfect sense. Mariah.
I think I have two parts to this answer. I think the first part that's so key that we so often neglect, the tech is critically important, but I think we oftentimes neglect the people part. So we really had to take a lot of time to align the relationship between marketing and technology, align the relationships even between marketing, so that we could better understand how the requests to tag were coming in, how the requests for data about campaigns were coming in, and then take the time to ensure that we had a really good governance foundation to stand on. I think the other thing that I would say is be really thoughtful about what you're collecting and why you're collecting it. What decisions are you trying to make with the data? It's not that helpful to tell someone that you've had 20,000 page views in the last month without context. And so really helping to educate the folks who are going to consume this data on the context and what decisions that they're making, that is going to help you understand how to move forward with technology and how to build out what you need.
Awesome. Alan.
Mine's going to be a very foundational answer, in the sense that we always focus on deploying all these pieces of tech and platforms, and we're currently experiencing some pains with some of our tech debt that I've also experienced back at Novartis, back at Alcon. and it's our metadata. So as you start thinking about what you need for your agents and all this future stuff that you want to do, you're going to need to fix your end-to-end metadata. No, you haven't done it for the last 10 years. Now you're going to have to do it and make sure that it's a really tip-top shape so that the agents can know what to read, it has the right context. But not only that, down the chain or downstream when you get to your reporting, you're really comparing apples to apples and not, apples to tuna. And so I think as we're still, I would say 60% there maybe, it's a crucial piece, I think, that once solved will allow us to move quicker and innovate in much better ways.
Makes perfect sense. First comes the trusted data foundation, then come the agents, then the patient trust or the customer trust, finally.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. We have about 4 minutes. Does anybody in the audience have a question? We may have time for one or two. All right, we'll end it there. Thank you, Alan, Mariah, and Lawrence. That was awesome.
Thank you.